And we are live.
And welcome into Gator Bytes on the 1010XL.com podcast network, also being simulcast on the Florida Gator 1010XL Facebook page. Today's Gator podcast is brought to you by Southeast Orthopedic Specialist for the highest quality care. You can rely on Southeast Orthopedic Specialist for any orthopedic injury or concern. Be sure to log on to their website, se-ortho.com. And we certainly appreciate Southeast Orthopedic Specialist for bringing you this edition of Gator Bites. He is Graham Marsh. I'm the hacker Ryan Green. You, presumably, are Florida Gator fans, fans of a team that just went into Alabama and got a huge win on Wednesday night. The Gators now 26-4 on the year, and all the bracketology projections that have come out since that game have Florida back as a one seed in the NCAA tournament heading into the final weekend of the regular season. Graham, the win at Auburn was terrific. Boy, the win at Alabama felt almost as good. Two huge road wins for the Gators this year.
Last week, Hack, you said that you hated to be right, but you were. Well, guess what, Hack? This week, I love to be right, baby. I love to be right. What did I tell you? I told you they were beating A&M, and I told you they were beating Alabama, and I didn't tell you they were beating Alabama. I said they were beating their ass. They were beating their ass. Bama got up early, and then Florida once. You know when I knew they were going to win that game? When Elijah Martin hit that three right before half, I said they ain't losing. If they're this locked in, and Elijah Martin, who's a good 3-point shooter, but it's not like he's not Walter Clayton from behind the line. When he was in transition, got behind the arc like that with that amount of confidence right before half, and just bam, right in their face. I said they're winning this basketball game. They got too much swagger. They got too much confidence. They're too good. And they did, and then they obviously murdered Texas A&M on Saturday, which is kind of a shame because I feel like that's gonna get flown under the radar. A good Texas A&M team came into Gainesville and got their ass kicked this past Saturday night too.
Yeah, it's weird that you don't even think about the A&M victory or the Mississippi State win, which is a good win, right? Everybody's talking about Auburn and Alabama and I guess Tennessee at home earlier this year. The star of the game was, I mean, Walter Clayton was great, but the story was Alex Condon. And I was thinking as he was just decimating the Crimson Tide on senior night, the 1 year jump for Alex Condon from where he was last year to where he is this year, he's probably going to be a first round pick in the NBA draft at this point. I mean, later first round pick. We'll see if he comes back or if he goes to the league. But man, I don't know if I can remember, at least at Florida, a jump for somebody, at least a big man, from where they were, say, 1 year to where they are 12 months later.
What's gonna make him an NBA prospect, Hack, is him a first round NBA prospect, I should say, is him being able to shoot the three now with a decent amount of confidence. I mean, he's now checked all the boxes that an NBA team wants. In a guy that's going to play, he's probably going to play. He plays the. I know he plays the five for us, but he's probably going to play the four
Mm-hmm.
in NBA. And in today's NBA, you play the four, you better be able to shoot, and he can shoot. And something he's always been able to do, which is going to be extremely valuable to NBA teams, is he can get up the floor, coast to coast, man. He never lags behind, and if he'll get you. This is part of why they can push the ball so well. Alex Condon, he'll get you an offensive rebound, or sorry, a defensive rebound, and he'll coast to coast that thing himself.
Yeah.
And he'll get on the offensive side of the court around the 3-point arc, free throw line, whatever. And I mean, he's dishing, he's driving, he's going to the rack like he's a damn point guard or a shooting guard. I mean, it's nothing to him to go up and down the floor. So that versatility, along with his size and athletic ability, along with how good of a defender he is, yeah, I tend to agree. And unfortunately, I think that's going to mean this is his last year in Gainesville. But uh, man, how good has he been?
And it's like Florida, and we've talked about this a lot, but I think we saw it on Wednesday night. Florida just decimated Alabama on the glass, kind of took their will from them. I mean, when you can just rotate Chinyalu and Hauk and Condon and Handlocked and Alexis didn't even play. He was available. I think he was dressed. He just didn't even play. So they only played four of their bigs. But if you're Alabama, you're just getting wiped out on the glass. You know that if you get one of those guys in foul trouble or even two in foul trouble, it really doesn't matter because they got two additional bigs that are maybe just as good. Or the depth of this Gator team, again, I made this comparison a few weeks back, is starting to rival that of 2000. Um, and again, for people that remember that 2000 team, that was a team that lost to Michigan State in the national championship game. But you just rattle off the names of Teddy Dupay, Brett Nelson, Mike Miller, Donnell Harvey, Justin Hamilton, Brent Wright, Udonis Haslam, Matt Bonner. I mean, it was crazy the amount of guys that they had on that team. You start rattling off this year's team, it's very, very similar. I don't know how many teams in the country can legit go 10 deep if they need to. Florida can legit go 10 deep if it comes to that.
They can, and I think also, Hack, something that I like, speaking of how deep they can go, is I like the fact, though, that in this Alabama game, they went, and now they got everybody healthy, they kind of can do this again. I like that they went to their original starting lineup that they had before all the injuries. You got Clayton, Richard, Martin, Condon, Chinyalu as your starters, and the reason I like that, and Thomas Hauk is I think Thomas Hauk is probably their third best player. I think he's that good. But I like them doing this rotation because we talked about this last week. Like, it's nice to be really deep, but going into March and March Madness, you have to have a consistent rotation. And Florida's consistent rotation can be 9 deep or 10 deep. That's perfectly fine. But you need to show up every game with everyone having a very clearly defined, okay, I know what I'm doing. I know roughly how many minutes I'm going to play. I know what my expectation is, that type of thing. So there's no confusion and that they don't get clunky and out of sorts because they're playing in a weird rotation they're not used to. So I believe that if I had to guess, I mean, I don't have a crystal ball. I'm not inside Todd Golden's head. But if I had to guess, that's probably the lineup they're going to stick with. And that's, I think, the best strategy.
You know, it's interesting, again, where the seating is with the bracketology, with Joe Lenardi on ESPN, Jerry Palm on CBS. They got Florida as a 1 right now. And we've had that conversation. I know people kind of want that 1 just as a badge of honor. I'm not sure how much it really matters to be a 1 or a 2, to be honest, but it would be nice to be a 1. And it's going to come down to the SEC tournament, it looks like. And I don't know if it normally does that. I think at this point, if you're a 1, you're a 1 because you're really not competing with another conference team for a 1 spot. Yet Florida and Tennessee are kind of doing that. Tennessee loses to Ole Miss. Florida beats Alabama. Florida jumps Tennessee into that 1 spot. All the thinking is. And then we'll see what happens in the regular season finale this week. But assuming both Florida and Tennessee win, it will come down to Nashville. It will come down to the conference tournament. Maybe it's as simple as who makes a deeper run, the Gators or the Volunteers, to see who locks down potentially that fourth number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament.
It shouldn't matter, but I think it will. Your point. I don't know, man. I'm weird. I'm kind of weird about the SEC tournament now because of what happened to Florida last year. I mean, I firmly believe that was a team poised to make a deep run in March. Deep run last year, I think, was more like Sweet 16. Deep run this year is Final Four. But, you know, obviously with Micah Hand-Lockton going down last year in the SEC championship game against Auburn, paired with the fact that, man, they had to play game after game after, and they didn't have the double bye last year, so that obviously changes things a bit. But I don't know, man. I want the 1 seed. I think especially beating Alabama made everybody's eyes get real big on that 1 seed, and mine included. I don't want the 1 seed at the expense of a fatigued and or injured team going into the NCAA tournament.
No, and the committee, again, I don't know this, but the committee normally for the 1s, I think if you look at history, like if they play on Sunday in the conference championship game, I think the committee does everything they can to put that 1 seed on the Friday date to give them an extra day instead of having them play Thursday. Because I agree, if they get to the finals on Sunday, they're on an airplane on Tuesday flying to their destination for Wednesday shoot around and Thursday the game. So my hope is if they make a deep run that there are the Friday Sunday opening weekend as opposed to the Thursday Saturday opening weekend. But I have a different take on the SEC tournament this year. I agree with you that normally I don't like conference tournaments. I just want to rest for the NCAA tournament. I'm enjoying watching this team so much, and I know how hard it is to win the championship anyway, that I want to see them play Auburn again. I want to see them play Alabama again or Tennessee again. I think that would be fun in Nashville. Obviously, I hope it doesn't cost them in the NCAA tournament, but I want to see these games against these conference opponents again because I think those will just be good basketball games. They would be fun to watch.
This team is really, really fun, man. They're really,
Let me,
really fun. I hate that the ride is going to be over in a month
yeah,
or close to a month. This has been the most fun I have had watching a Florida team of any sport in like 10 years.
I got to go back. Basketball wise, it's been the best since 13-14, the Patrick Young team. Let me ask you this. Um, I take the SEC, you take the field. Who's winning the NCAA tournament?
The SEC.
So you would take the SEC over the field?
I don't want Duke and their ugly colors and their stupid looking coach and
That means I get 12 teams, you get the other 56, and you still feel confident I'm winning the title?
heck, I don't care about the other 56. You're really asking me. You get the SEC and I get Houston and Duke is really
And
what.
Michigan State.
Sure, Michigan State. I want the SEC. I want Auburn. I want Alabama. I want the Gators. I want Tennessee. I want that's who I want.
And again, so by the way, Southeast Orthopedic Specialist brings you Gator Bytes, 1010XL.com podcast network. You can check out the good doctor Kevin Murphy on Thursday mornings on the drill with Jeff and Dan for his weekly analysis of injuries in the world of sports. Southeast Orthopedic Specialist has been with us here on Gator Bytes basically since the inception of this years and years ago. And we certainly appreciate the good folks at Southeast Orthopedic Specialist for bringing you Gator Bytes weekly here on 1010XL. Um, you know, it's interesting in talking about the SEC versus the field, and it's going to be interesting to see what the committee does too, because we talked about this a couple weeks ago. I had Jerry Palm on Hacker After Dark. Remember, they're talking about 12 SEC teams potentially making the NCAA tournament, maybe an outside shot at 13. And if it's 13, then you begin talking about the greatest conference in the history of college basketball, number wise, as far as the percentage of teams in a conference that make the tournament. But the committee's not going to want to put SEC versus SEC. So again, it's worth noting if you only played one time in the regular season, then conference team versus conference team can play in the round of 32. If you played twice in the regular season, you can't play until the Sweet 16. And if you played three times in the regular season, they won't match you up until the Elite Eight, which is a crazy formula. But that's one that I learned when I was talking to Jerry Palm. So, for example, Florida and Tennessee played twice. They would not play, and maybe a third time in the SEC tournament, but for the here and now, they played twice. They would not match up until the Sweet 16. Um, but Florida and Kentucky, as an example, only played once. So the committee would match them up in the round of 32 if they needed to. Just something to keep in mind as we get close to Selection Sunday.
I'll play anybody, anytime, any place.
Well, you're gushing with the overflowing of positivity, man.
Gators, Gators by 25, no matter who they play.
So let me ask you this then. Is it national, based on what you're saying, not to put words in your mouth, I'm going to ask you, national championship or bust?
Final Four bust.
Final Four or bust. Okay.
Yeah. We get to the Final Four, we see what happens. I think you can only be national championship or bust if you've got like lottery picks on your team. And I don't think Florida has that. But the Final Four bust, yeah. I mean, are they not one of the two or three best teams in college basketball?
They are, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to make it to the Final Four. Weird stuff happens in March.
I agree, but in terms of what the expectation for them to do.
Oh, I think when the brackets come out a week from Sunday, I get the feeling a lot of people will pick Florida to win the national title.
That's right. That's right.
Florida, Auburn,
I am said.
Duke. I mean, of the 68, Florida, Auburn, and Duke will be the prevailing picks. I think there'll be a sprinkling in of Michigan State, maybe a sprinkling in of Houston, maybe in Knoxville, a sprinkling in of Tennessee. I don't know outside of those six how many more teams are going to be picked to win the title.
Tennessee.
Well, I'm just saying if you're a Tennessee fan. Tennessee's pretty good, dude.
I'm not worried about Rick Barnes and March.
Well, they beat Florida by 20 the last time we saw them.
That's great.
So,
March.
well, you're right.
Rick Barnes is an all-time choker in March.
You know, and that is another topic too.
That's like
This Gator,
like John
other than well, real quick, other than Elijah Martin, all right, because Martin's been to a Final Four. Not a lot of success in March for the players or Todd Golden, who's obviously still very young in his career. Does lack of experience outside of Elijah Martin weigh on your mind at all?
No, no. I mean, what? I mean, Cooper Flagg's never done it before. Is that gonna hurt him?
True.
No. Look, if this was the NFL and it's the Super Bowl and you're playing against the Chiefs who have been there 100 times, then I think that conversation has a little more merit. Look, man, this is college basketball, and it's today's college basketball when guys are on different teams every time you blink. Almost none of these guys are experienced. So
I guess
I bring experience and whatever, but like, and I guess the Bama team with Mark Sears and Grant Nelson, they did it last year, but no, I'm not worried about that. I mean,
I don't know I don't even know how I would look this up. I'm just curious. Florida got knocked out in the first round last year. How many teams have gone from losing in round one or not making the tournament to the very next year being in the Final Four? Usually it's a progression, right? You get, first round or second round, then to the Sweet 16, and then you make that jump. I don't know how many teams go from round one to 12 months later being in the Final Four.
that progression was true in the old format hack, but with the portal and with how early that's kind of out the window. I think Rick Pitino was on a podcast the other day and he was talking about this, and I agreed with him. He said college basketball now is like Euroball is, where you sign everybody to a 1-year deal, and this year is your team, and then next year is next year's team, and you just take it each year. And every once in a while, you'll have your UConns and such where guys will come back and whatever. And the NIL lets you keep guys around a little bit longer. But for the most part, Hack, I'm not worried about experience. I think most teams are inexperienced in this time. And if they do have experience, it's one guy here or there, kind of like Florida does with Martin. You've got your exceptions, like I was saying, like Bama's got the experience, of course. Auburn's got some experience. Janai Broome has made a run before. So there's some, but not a lot.
Quickly, because I want to end with spring football. Senior day on Saturday at the O'Connell Center. Ole Miss comes in. Final home game for Walter Clayton. Final home game for Will Richard. Final home game for Elijah Martin. You would expect it's probably the final home game for Condon. I don't know after that. Hauk, I would think, comes back. Aberdeen, I would think, comes back. Hanlockton will be back. I think Chinulu will be back. Klobuchar will be back. But for those four, particularly Martin, Richard, and Clayton, which are definitely their final home games, probably Condon. Probably a lot of emotion in Gainesville on Saturday when Ole Miss rolls in.
That's right. Of course, there's a lot of emotion when these guys made you the best basketball team in the country.
Walter Clayton and Will Richard in particular. Clayton 2 years, Richard longer than that. Martin, great, but he's only been there a year, so let's at least focus the last part here on Clayton and Richard. What have they meant to Gator basketball?
Walter Clayton is the best guard they've had at least since Scotty Wilbekin. I think he's better than Scotty Wilbekin, though. So probably going back to the 06, 07 teams. He's one of the best guards in the history of Gator basketball.
Chioza?
No, Chioza's not better than Walter Clayton. Chioza's a good player. He's not better than Walter Clayton.
What about Will Richard? Your thoughts on him?
You know I've been iffy on Will Richard, but he's really come on as of late. So in the SEC tournament and in March Madness, Will, improve your stock with me. The stock has improved already.
Yeah, I think, look, Walter Clayton, we're early into the transfer portal era, but even if you go back to, 10, 15 years ago, the Vernon Macklins, the Dorian Finney-Smiths, guys of that sort, I mean, Walter Clayton's the best transfer they've brought in, right? Like, ever.
Yeah, I agree.
So, and Will Richard has been phenomenal as well. Elijah Martin, 1 year, but a huge impact on this team. And then we'll see about Alex Condon. But again, I mean, more mock drafts you see in the NBA, the more times you see Alex Condon's name popping up top of round 2 into round 1. I think he could obviously improve his stock if he comes back, but that would be a tall order to ask him to come back if the NBA scouts think he's going to be a first round pick.
Yeah, I would think so too. He's probably going to be. I'm not even really much entertaining him coming back.
Finally, spring football. I guess the big story is DJ Lagway. Maybe there's something going on with the shoulder. They're going to monitor it and maybe not do as much with him this spring. I know that came out yesterday. I know Napier listed like 10 or 12 guys that they're going to monitor, and Lagway was on the list, which obviously was big news. Anything outside of that you're curious about as spring drills open up?
Not really. I don't care about spring ball, especially with the Gators, with Gator basketball playing so well. I'll pay attention and I'll see, especially the young freshmen, and see who's kind of panning out. I remember Eugene Wilson. We heard right away his freshman year was playing well in spring. So, wait, is that true, or was he a late? Was he a late enrollee? Maybe it was fall camp. I might be getting it mixed up. This shows how invested in the spring ball I am. Look, man, whatever. We'll see in the fall.
And that's where I talked to a couple guys in Gainesville. I do think the basketball team, because of how good they are, is kind of taken away from spring football. I'll monitor it, obviously, because we'll talk about it on 1010XL. The Lagway thing is something to at least keep in mind. But yeah, I want to see some of the young guys, Dallas Wilson, Vernell Brown, guys of that sort. Want to see how they look. We'll have guys on down in Gainesville that are out at practice, but just worth noting the spring football is underway for the University of Florida. Final moments on the Gator Bytes podcast. A Southeast orthopedic specialist brings it to you every week here on 1010XL.com, the Florida Gator 1010XL Facebook page as well. Thank you to Southeast Orthopedic Specialists. They're in Jacksonville and St. Augustine. They got locations all over the place. Riverside, North Side, the South Side, the beaches, St. John's, you name it. se-ortho.com is where you can find the good folks at Southeast Orthopedic Specialists. Quickly, Graham, senior day against Ole Miss. Ole Miss coming off a win against Tennessee, right? That's not a bad basketball team coming to Gainesville, but I assume you like the Gators to win the game on Saturday?
It won't be a game.
Boy, you are confident, man.
Have you watched this team? Of course I'm confident.
I have.
Did you watch them play basketball? Did you see them tonight?
I saw them 10 days ago be down by 26 in Athens, too.
Okay, that's great. That was the last loss of the season.
Well, right. It was 10 days ago. I'm just pointing that out. The SEC is no joke. But I think they beat Ole Miss, too. By the way, the standings could change, but the last time I checked it, Florida is going to play the winner of the 7-10 game on Thursday in the SEC. They'll play that game on Friday. Right now, I believe the 7-10 game would be Ole Miss and Vanderbilt. That's assuming Vandy beats LSU in the 10-15 game. So the way the standings are, Florida would see either LSU, Vandy, or Ole Miss on Friday in the quarterfinals, and then would likely see Alabama in the semis in a 2-3 matchup. Again, we will certainly keep you updated on all that. Graham, I think we hit it all, man. Anything else you want to add?
No, sir. Gators by 20.
He is Graham Marsh. I'm the hacker Ryan Green. Thank you for watching and listening to Gator Bytes, 1010XL.com, and the Florida Gator 1010XL Facebook page.